Fashion is so messy right now. I don't know if you've noticed. If you follow all of the industry updates happening, you'll know that there's been this mass shift in luxury designers lately. So many designers leaving their posts, so many new ones coming to take their place, and it just feels very volatile. So today I kind of wanted to talk about that and talk about a very specific thing I saw on Twitter about the audacity of luxury fashion houses, and also some other online discourse around sweaters and a popular pop star right now. So let's get into it. Before we do, you know the drill. This is a REFASHIONED episode that I host on my Spotify and Apple podcasts. You might be watching this on YouTube, and that's because sometimes I upload them on there too. But definitely subscribe to me on my podcast because I do exclusive content on there. Okay, so my first point about fashion designers moving around a lot this year. Apparently, there has been 16 different creative directors appointed at luxury brands this year alone. And some of them have been truly messy. There was one, I've forgotten which designer it was, but either they booted out the old designer or they quit and they brought in someone new within the same day. They didn't even give them a day to have their moment in the spotlight before it was no, here's who's now designing for us. And if you watched my video on the sustainability of luxury fashion and also my fashion month briefing where I talked about how luxury fashion dealt with sustainability, you'll know that the luxury fashion industry is having a tough time right now. A lot of different things basically are converging, and sustainability is being brought way down in terms of importance. One example of fashion houses being messy and not caring about sustainability is the recent Twitter discourse I saw surrounding the brand Coperni, is that how you say it? And a seller on Vinted who exposed what happened in the lead up to their fashion runway. If you haven't seen the discourse, then basically a Coperni employee apparently bought a vintage Mickey Mouse t-shirt from someone off Vinted, and they haggled the price down from €9 to €7. This was 3 weeks before their fashion show, and the person only realized who it was that had bought this t-shirt and haggled with him when they saw it on the runway at Fashion Month. And using an old t-shirt design on the runway is one thing, and people who were replying to his original comment were saying it's actually quite normal for designers to use something vintage or secondhand, but normally change it in some way, which doesn't seem to be the case here. But anyway, using a vintage shirt is one thing. Haggling the price for €2 when you are a luxury fashion designer who is massive right now is insane. Kylie Jenner literally closed their show and it was a massive fashion moment. But obviously they had to have the budget to book Kylie, which is interesting. And a lot of people were saying they blew the whole budget on her and then had to haggle down the price of a vintage t-shirt. And in my opinion, when I saw this, I just thought how it really proves luxury is just a perception, because they expect us to pay full price for their items, bearing in mind full price is thousands of pounds. But when it comes to paying someone else for their work, which in this case is the vintage user they bought from, whether they're a reseller or whether they're just uploading their personal wardrobe, I don't know. But there's no doubt in my mind that putting your clothes on a secondhand platform is work. It's not massively easy. You have to photograph things, you have to upload descriptions, you have to negotiate with people, you have to answer their questions, you have to pack the item up and take it to the post office when it's sold. There is a whole lot of work that goes into this. And it's just interesting to me that a luxury fashion brand thinks it's okay to haggle someone down by €2 on a €9 shirt and put it in a fashion show where it will be placed next to designs that are being sold for thousands of pounds. It's just very, very messy to me. And I'm sure that the brand didn't want this coming out, but I'm so, so glad it did. Obviously, I saw this on Twitter and the general consensus was that the brand was in the wrong for this. People could not believe that they couldn't pay €9 for an item of clothing that would go down a fashion show. But there was also a couple of other fashion debates going on at the same time, all kind of centered around how much we should pay for fashion. And I think it's interesting that all of these debates were happening at the same time. But let me bring you up to speed on the other two. Okay, first kind of Twitter drama was around sweaters, because it started really innocently, to be fair. There was just a tweet showing an image of Sabrina Carpenter side by side with an image of Rory Gilmore. Both were wearing classic knit sweaters, and I think the tweet was like, "Welcome back, Rory Gilmore." And the drama only really started when someone quote tweeted this and said, "I'm so depressed with the current state of sweaters in fashion today," or something like that. And at that point, the internet kind of did what the internet does. Basically, you had one side of the debate saying that if you want sweaters like this today, don't buy from fast fashion brands, buy secondhand, buy vintage ones. Here's so many links of them just sat there on eBay or Vinted or whatever, and they're very accessible for everyone, basically. People were trying to provide an alternative to the fast fashion items that the original poster was apparently bemoaning. And the other side of the internet was annoyed about the fact that these vintage secondhand sweaters were not £10. They were like £40, £60, £80 is too much for a sweater. Why should I be expected to pay this? Which is, an inevitable thing that happens anytime someone brings up fashion that is not cheap. And I kind of came into this discussion late, so I kind of just saw like the aftermath and all of the like snarky tweets that made it into hit tweets. And I guess that kind of influenced my takeaway from the debate, because I just saw how mean we were being to each other. Like, there was a tweet that was like £80, £90, girl, come on now. And another tweet that was like, maybe you should just shop at Shein if you like this quality and stuff. And basically all I could take away from it was the fact that we're so busy arguing with each other that we almost kind of miss the point, I guess, in a way. And to me, the main takeaway from this initial tweet saying, "I hate the state of sweaters right now," should be anger at the fact that fashion is allowed to sell us such poor quality stuff, and we're just going to accept it as like a way of life. And I think that kind of message got lost in the fact that a lot of people, obviously well-meaningly, rush to give alternatives to say like, well, vintage is much better quality and secondhand can be much better quality. Like, here, you don't have to shop from fast fashion brands. Obviously, that was, providing a solution to people, and that was where people were mostly coming from. But it did kind of mean that we skipped over blaming fast fashion brands and immediately went to a solution, which again is a great concept. Like, provide a solution to people, get them to shop secondhand fashion, take it away from fast fashion brands. But I think we should have spent more time asking why fast fashion is allowed to get away with this in the first place, and why we have to resort to shopping something from 20 years ago or 10 years ago or 30 years ago if we want to guarantee the quality. Like, why are we just allowing the idea that we can't get quality right now? And that's just like a state of fact, because it should not be. And I spoke about this exact topic in my Substack post, which some of you might have seen, that I released on Monday. But it makes me ask the question why we skip over blaming fast fashion brands and holding them to account and go straight to arguing with each other about who's right and who's wrong and who should have access to this and what's too expensive. And like, just fast fashion brands can get away with just sitting there and letting us argue amongst ourselves and know that we're not gonna, demand answers from them. I don't know, because it seems like every time this kind of discourse comes up on Twitter, which is all the time, like we literally have this discussion over and over again in different formats, it feels like we have one small moment of self-reflection and like an epiphany almost of, yeah, we shouldn't have to put up with this. And then someone says something like, oh, it's too expensive, or, oh, you can get this secondhand or whatever. And like, it just triggers the debate, and it just switches it over into well, you shouldn't be asking me to do that, or you should be shopping better. And it's like, we're just going at each other. And it's like such a fine trigger for people. And I'm not innocent in this either. I've participated in these debates on Twitter before, and I went to participate in this debate too before I kind of stepped back and thought, like, why are we wasting our energy trying to convince each other that we're right when we could just be demanding better from the people that have the power to make it happen? And I don't know, I definitely think there is power in getting the public to make better purchasing choices. Like, I'm not discrediting that. I do think we need to be having this discussion about why fast fashion is not great and how there is so many secondhand clothes out there already that you don't need to buy new. I'm 100% on board with that. But I also didn't like the fact that we moved on too quickly. And I also just don't like the fact that it turns into who can make the most scathing comeback to someone's tweet and like silence them because of that. It's this culture of like shaming people or just arguing. And I just don't think anyone who's on either side of the debate is going to actually listen to each other if this is the vibe we're bringing to the discussion. Not even the discussion, the debate. Okay, I went into that a lot more than I thought I was going to. It kind of triggered me a little bit. I wrote this down a lot more eloquently in my Substack, but one thing I didn't say in there, and one thing I want to say here, is also the Chapel Roan merch, because to be honest, I was quite confused about this. I, again, came to it late. I was trying not to be on Twitter for like a weekend, so I missed like a whole lot. It was like the worst weekend to not be on Twitter. So even when I went back and tried to find the original tweet that sparked this, like, Chapel Roan is selling really expensive merch, how can we afford this? I couldn't find the initial tweet. I saw some responses saying the same thing. I saw some responses from other people saying that her merch is not overpriced and that it was this expensive because it was ethically made. And I looked on her website to see if that was true. And I found the t-shirt in question was made from 100% reclaimed waste cotton with an ethical supply chain entirely within North America. And obviously that sounds great. So I was kind of confused at the price of £32. Like, I guess I was just in a bit of disbelief as to how this sparked the debate about merch being too expensive, because £32 for a cotton t-shirt that your favorite person is selling does not sound like a lot. And I guess it just goes back to the whole idea that fast fashion has warped our perception of how much clothing should cost. I guess that people were expecting these t-shirts to be selling for less than £20, which is just a little insane to me. But also, I've wanted to speak for a while now about the merch industry and how wasteful it can be. And I do think it's a good thing that merch is priced, reasonably, in my opinion, but maybe higher in other people's opinion, because it will stop it being turned into just another, form of overconsumption. I guess the last thing I was confused about was the fact that the people who didn't want to pay £32 for a t-shirt, or I think it was like £100 for a hoodie, was in some people's tweets as well. Shein is literally selling Chapel Roan merch for like £4. So if you don't want to pay £32 for a cotton hoodie made from recycled waste with a supply chain that is entirely mapped, so you know that there's going to be accountability and traceability from the clothing you're wearing, then there are options for you. You can go spend £4 at Shein and wear a 100% polyester top that was made in unethical working conditions. I guess it kind of felt a little bit like entitlement, that everything should be priced according to someone's perception of how it should be priced, rather than a fair, just cost for what it is. And I saw this tweet that I wanted to read out, which kind of sums it up. Between the Chapel Roan merch discourse and the sweater discourse, I think some of you are not grasping that actually clothing should cost a lot more, especially if it's well ethically made, and that means you should probably own less. And yeah, I know that's a hard concept for some people to accept, because obviously we're so used to being able to overconsume that being told we shouldn't overconsume is a bit jarring. But I just agree. There was also one other tweet that I wanted to talk about from particularly this sweater discourse, which was Since we're entering sweater discourse season again, a reminder that it's normal for these handmade sweaters to cost $300 new, which is why your local Scandinavians don't bother selling them anymore. You cannot demand high quality, cheap, and brand new. Pick two. And I think she kind of ate with that, like that last line. Like, it's so true. You cannot have something high quality, cheap, and brand new. Something has to give, and so often in fashion today it's high quality, and a lot of us are happy to accept that, and we're happy to swap high quality for cheap stuff that we can keep switching out in our wardrobe and have that newness. But you have to understand that you're giving something up, you know, you can't demand it all. And lastly, I wanted to bring up Lakin's tweet, which just kind of, you know, is a nice place to end. There's a certain cognitive dissonance when it comes to clothes. People will see something that is of high quality and looks great and still declare it's not worth a higher price than something that isn't high quality and doesn't look great. I think this is like completely just hitting the nail on the head. It's just a mix of us not understanding what high quality clothes cost and us being so used to fast fashion that we can't see the value of clothes anymore. We don't know what quality looks like. We don't know what the true cost of something should be if it's being made in the right way. And, you know, part of that's our fault. Most of it is brands' fault for trying to get away with it. But I think if I was going to take anything away from all of these debates, it's that we should be demanding so much more from fashion. We should not be distracted by arguing amongst ourselves about who's right, who's wrong, and let fashion continue to get away with the fact that they have been shoving polyester at us for years when they 100% didn't need to. I know in some cases polyester is the right move. It is not the right move for every situation, which is what they're trying to get away with. And we need to demand better. So yeah, I guess this was what I wanted to hop on to say. Definitely go read my Substack because I put a lot of my thoughts a lot more eloquently on there. But thank you so much for watching or listening, and I will speak to you really soon. I hope you have a lovely day. Bye.